Hey everybody, Becca here. So today I want to give you a sequence that works on the alignment of the hips, and this is important because our hips are the house of our first chakra. And if you read Louise Hay, who I absolutely love, you'll know that the hips are also, anything with the hips usually means like you're kind of out of balance, you're having issues with making the bigger decisions in your life, the decisions that affect your safety and stability. So anything that has to do with money or work or your home or food, those kind of decisions, they all have to do with the hips. They all come back to the hips. And that makes complete sense because the first chakra, which is located right at the base of the spine, also deals with those kind of things that have to do with your safety and stability in life. So today we're going to work on aligning our hips properly in a sequence, within our sequence, because it behooves us to align ourselves properly so that we get the optimal flow of energy for these things that involve these really big issues in our lives. So let's just start in a seated position, and I'm just going to start with teaching you how to sit. So I'm actually going to turn to the side here, and go ahead, and if you have tighter hips, if your knees are lifting up higher than your hip joints when you sit down on the ground, elevate your seat. So I've got a blanket here to elevate my butt a little bit. And you want to sit directly on the apex of your sit bones. This is something that I learned from my teacher, Gina Schatz. And to find the apex of your sit bones, go ahead and stick your hands right under your booty and feel those two bones at the bottom of your pelvis. And rock your hips back and forth so that you can feel the shape of the bone. And the bottom of your sit bone, the bottom of those bones at the bottom of your pelvis, look kind of like the bottom of my, my fist here, and they have a very distinct apex. So if you draw your belly button to your spine while you're sitting on your fingers, draw your belly button to your spine, send your hips or your pelvis forward, you'll feel the apex, and then you'll feel it disappear underneath your fingers. And then send your tailbone back behind you, your belly button forward, and you'll feel the apex again, and then you'll feel it disappear behind you. And so keep rocking back and forth until you find that spot that's directly on the apex. And it'll feel underneath your fingers like a very a localized pressure on your fingertips rather than more spread out pressure on your fingertips. And that, in a seated position, is aligning the hips properly, sitting directly on the apex of your sit bones, and that actually will align the rest of your spine, because your sacrum and your tailbone is the start of your spine. So go ahead and stand up once you've found that comfortable seat and you've learned to sit on your sit bones. And I have to apologize, you won't be able to see my head, but that's okay, because all you need to see is my hips in this. It's a small room, and I can't get the camera far enough away so you can see my whole body. But go ahead and walk to the top of your mat, take your feet hip distance apart, toes point straight forwards, slight bend in your knees so that they're soft and they're not locked out. And then I want you to take your hands to the top of your thighs and press your thighs back in space so that your lower back arches. I like to call this cheerleader butt or duck butt. Send your tailbone back. So it's like a spreading of those two sit bones. And now, you're going to draw your belly button towards your spine, tuck your tailbone towards the floor so that your low back lengthens. So you're no longer arching your back, you've got length in the low back, but your thighs are still rooted into the back plane of the body. And these motions will help you stack your hips directly over your knees, which are stacked directly over your ankles, and keep you all in alignment. So that's the actions, those are the actions that we're going to do in our practice today. Just go ahead and take downward facing dog. And start to find movement in your down dog. Just get comfortable, especially if this is early in the morning or maybe your first stretch of the day. Look down at your feet. Make sure your feet are hip distance apart and your toes are pointing straight forward, so they're not turned out or in, they're pointing straight forwards. And then bend your knees just a little bit so you can have a little bit more movement in your pelvis, and send that tailbone to the sky. So you lengthen the low back. Just like we did standing, it's almost like sticking your butt out for a duck butt. Then draw your belly button towards your spine and reach your tailbone away from you. And if you can maintain this length in your low back and straighten your legs out, then go for the straight legs. Otherwise, keep your knees bent. And just find stillness here, breathe deeply. Let the alignment turn into muscle memory so that it becomes just automatic for you. And then go ahead and inhale and hinge forward into a high plank. And exhale your knees, your chest, and your chin down to the ground. Inhale, come forward, lay flat on your belly. Bring your forehead to the ground and walk your hands back beneath your elbows. Tops of your feet on the ground. Press your feet and your knees into the ground so your hips lift slightly away from the floor. Here's your duck butt again. And then draw your belly button away from the ground and reach your tailbone towards your heels. Inhale, press up into cobra. Little cobra, start there. Just a small back bend. But it's really important to keep your belly button lifted away from the floor, reaching your tailbone towards your heels, so you keep maintain length in the lower back. The whole back bend is coming from the thoracic spine, the middle of your back. And then exhale, come down. Wiggle your hips side to side, release that back. And do it again. Press the tops of your feet, your knees into the ground so your pelvis lifts. Draw the belly button in, tuck your tailbone, lift up to cobra, maybe a little bit higher this time. Keep the tailbone reaching for your heels. Once you get there, breathe. Draw your shoulder blades together on your back. Exhale, release down. Wiggle your hips side to side. Breathe deeply. Let your hips just sink towards the ground so they feel the support of the ground beneath them. And then again, tops of the feet, knees press into the ground. Your tailbone reaches towards your heels, your belly button lifts away from the floor, and press yourself up again. This time all the way into upward facing dog, or just stay in the last pose in cobra a little bit longer. Keep the belly button lifting towards your spine, tailbone reaching. Exhale, come down. Take 2 deep breaths here. And lift yourself into downward facing dog. Inhale, walk forward so your feet meet your hands. Land in a standing forward fold. Feet are hip distance. And really press your sacrum towards the ceiling. Relax the crown of your head down. And then inhale, rise all the way up to standing, reach up. Exhale, your hands together. So we're going to do a couple balance pose here. Again, I know you can't see my face, but I apologize for that. So in the balance poses, I want you to imagine that your legs are suctioning up into your torso, so really pull those legs up and in. And then just go ahead and lift your right foot off the ground and let it hover off of the ground so you can really feel the action of pulling your leg up and in. Your femur bone connects into your hip socket, and do the same thing with the other foot. Let it hover and pull it up and in. So when we do our balance poses, the tendency when we lift one foot off the ground is to disconnect, to compensate for the change in your center of gravity, but you really want to stay connected. So start with that duck butt, draw your belly button in, reach the tailbone towards the ground, and then lift your right foot off the ground, hug your knee into your chest. Stay connected, press those thighs back. Keep your hips square, and on an exhale, open your right knee out to the right, and you can reach your left hand out and away. Inhale, come back to center. Take tree pose. So the sole of your foot connects with the inside of your left thigh. Your hips are square to the ground. Keep the left thigh rooting back. You can even put your hand there to make that happen. Draw your belly button towards your spine. Reach your tailbone towards the ground. And inhale. Lift your arms to the sky. And it's okay if you wobble. That's the nature of a tree, right? They blow in the wind. Exhale, release out of the pose. Switch sides. So suck your femur bones up into the hip socket. Engage those legs. Hug your shins together. And then hug the left knee to your chest. Settle your hips so that the left hip and the right hip are even and square to the ground. And really work to not hike your thighs forward, but really keep the thighs pressing back. And then exhale, open your left leg out to the left. Your right arm can go out to the right. Keep the belly button in, reaching your tailbone towards the ground. Inhale, come back to center, and move into tree pose. Sorry about that. So the sole of your left foot connects with the inner right thigh, or you can take it to the inner shin, or you can just use your toe as a kickstand and put your heel, rest your heel on your shin. If that's where you are today, embrace it. Either way, whatever version of this pose you're doing, keep your thighs rooted back in space. Draw your belly button in, tailbone reaches to the ground, and then grow your branches. Reach your arms up to the sky when you're ready. You can always use a wall for support. That's literally what they're made for, supporting the house. They're also made to support you. So if you need to bring your hand to a wall, that's totally okay. Exhale, release down. And find your way onto the floor. So now that you can see my face again, I like to use a blanket to sit on to allow my hip flexors to open a little bit, but find the apex of your sitting bones. Bring the soles of your feet together and just hold on to your shin ankles, your shankles, as my teacher Marnie calls them. Root your sitting bones into the ground. Allow them to get heavy. Go ahead and close your eyes. And lengthen from tailbone to the crown of your head. So it's almost like you're digging your tailbone into the ground like it's a little shovel. Dig a hole to plant a seed, whatever kind of metaphor that you want to use there. But really reach that tailbone into the ground. And then lift your knees up gently, just a little bit, and suck your femurs into the hip sockets. Plug them in. Breathe there, and then staying connected in the hip sockets, press your knees towards the ground. Lengthen through the spine and go ahead and fold forward as far as you can go while keeping a flat back. So we don't want to round, we don't want to take our head to our toes, we want to bring the chest down to the toes, the heart down to the toes. And with every inhale, the crown of your head reaches forward, and every exhale, you fold a little bit deeper. Sending your sitting bones down into the floor. Spread them wide apart so it helps you move deeper into the pose. And inhale, come up. And then you can go ahead and remove that blanket. Still in Baddha Konasana. Lay flat on your back. Palms face the sky. Soften your hips, soften your shoulders. Try to ignore the sound of my dogs playing outside. And find spaciousness in your first chakra, allowing the energy to move up your spine. Soft in the hips, heavy in the hips. Allowing them
just to open.